Good morning, it's Norma Cowie, and today I'm going to be talking about past lives. During the week, I spent some time remembering some of my early lives. It just popped into my mind, and I thought, oh, yeah, right, this is what I did way back when. One of my early experiences, I should start with how I got into past lives. I worked in a metaphysical bookstore as their tarot card reader. And the owner brought in different speakers to speak on different topics. And excuse me, and I attended quite a number of astrology ones, but as I have said before, me and astrology didn't quite click. And I had some excellent teachers. And I have an excellent memory, mine usually, except when it comes to astrology. So I was quite interested in this new person that was coming in, who was an astrologer, but had written this book called Hypersentience. Long story short was I was late getting to the workshop and a bit of emotional stress because of what had happened, which had made me late to be at the workshop. And I'm sure you all understand how that happens at times. Anyway, I arrived in the workshop with my pillow and what I was going to lie on because we were all lying on the floor. And I was the last person in. Crept in. They had already begun the workshop. Made my space. Laid down. And when all the introduction was done, she led us through a past life regression. Now, yes, I'd done a lot of meditation and things like that, but never had I done where I had gone back and looked at myself in another lifetime. You know, there's a tendency for us to think about when we're looking at ourselves in past lives to see the best, to see, you know, how we would like things to be. And this one didn't end up like that at all. It was quite startling, actually. And then because I was so clear in what I saw, I ended up in the afternoon having sort of an individual for the group to see because I could visualize really well. And so I saw another life that day. So it's 2 lives to begin with. But I want to talk about some of the ones that, you know, you wonder about. I've had a number of lives where they were way back in time, which when people say, oh, you're an old soul, I used to think they were a bit, you know, why are they calling me that? But when I take a look at how long I've been on Earth and how long I have experienced experiences way back, and I mean way back, early man. One of the lifetimes that really stands out to me, which is what began having this talk today, was I was a male and not very tall, pretty thick set. And there was just a little band of us, a little band of male and females. And it was very wooded. And I would say we were probably what we would know today, north and way in North America, not in more the central part. And it was all trees and rivers. So when we wanted to go anywhere, we had to walk, which means we kind of put whatever it was we had. We wore animal skins. It wasn't made. It was just skins put on. So we were fairly bare in the sense of skin showing. We were brown. And we were walking along. And then if we came to a river to cross it, we would find a tree that had fallen down because we didn't have tools to bring trees down. And we would sit on the trees. Well, a lot of people drowned, of course, this way because the tree would roll and you'd go in. And some rivers were very fast moving. But what came to me to realize at the time, I was male lead, kind of the leader of a group. And it was startling for me to go from modern day to see this being in very primitive way. And maybe 6 to 8 people in the group. I would say 6. You didn't live long, maybe 25, enough to probably have some children to kind of carry on, but 25, 30 would be old. You would be old at 30 for sure, really old. And often what took the group, people's changing, was basic through accidents, falling in the river and being pulled away, just hurting themselves with no way of healing themselves. That was my first run-in. That was the first reincarnation thing I ever did. Now, the difference when I do past life regressions, that I will ask really what's the reason or what's the meaning of this, and that wasn't done in fact, a couple of the 2 people that I had first of all ever leading this is they never really asked what the purpose was, whereas I find by understanding the person, like the purpose of why you're here, what happens makes a difference. So then I have since then had several lifetimes where I've been back in time. One of the big ones, which seemed to come in for some reason this week quite often, again, male, and a small group of people. And we were like in that time, people moved around a lot. It wasn't like I wasn't in a settlement. And at this time, I was the leader of the band, and I had a big, very big, long stick kind of thing, like a staff almost. And I had a long time to kind of get my head around this. But I began to see where leadership comes from. Now, we were a nomadic group. So we walked around, and then in a retrospect and looking at the time, I realized where we were. And we were coming up to a lake, and we were nomadic. I would say 10 to 15 of us, maybe even not that many, but we were like where this lake was, looked out across a lake. I'm going to sort of, how do I say, took my staff, put it in the ground, and said, this is where we're going to stay, and this is where we're going to build. And so the group became, instead of nomadic, they became settled. The interesting thing in this past life regression was I skipped through time. I went straight up in time. And all of a sudden, I saw myself, again male, on the steps of the Senate in Rome. And I was a Roman senator dressed with white robes, talking about peace, which was not really accepted too well. But anyway, and at that moment, I realized that where we were and where I put that staff was the beginning of Rome. Now, I've been to Rome a couple of times, and it's kind of interesting that as a female, I go visit. But to see these 2 lives through several years later, I mean, several. One minute we're a wandering band, and the next minute, here I am, a senator in the Roman element, bringing in, first of all, what people say is the first kind of thing that began to happen that way. My vocabulary sometimes is slipping from my mind a little bit. Those were early ones that had an important impact on my life, where you use logs to sit on to go down rivers, to where you have horses and chariots and things like that were well organized, well placed. And many lives in between, which I have, some of them I have run into. Sometimes I've been on the wrong side of the law, and sometimes on the right side of the law. And that's what's called experience. And that's what often is a part of us as we move. Now, there is a thought form that all time is one. And I read it because I can go back and I can go forward. Can I go forward? Yes, I have been forward. doesn't come to mind right at the moment, but we tend to remember back because it's easier for our conscious mind to think, oh yeah, we've had a past and we've been there in the past. But we can also, not everybody can do it, can look ahead and see future lives. And I've had in some of the workshops I've had people, and one of the ones, and I'm going to say that because it's popped in my mind, I was doing a small workshop for a small group, and I had 2 or 3 white-haired ladies like me. And they had never done anything like this before, and they thought it would be kind of fun to go and take a look at some past lives. So one lady, when we came back, I lead them, it's like a meditation, and come back, and she was like looking dazed, and so I had her talk about what was experiencing, which is first, and I remember the shock. She said, I can't believe this. I was a pilot in a spaceship leaving Earth and going to Mars. I'm not even interested in flying. Like, it's like we always think that whatever comes is it's going to be something that we know, that we're interested in, etc. And that is not exactly true. And she was like really like astounded and questioning and the validity. And so I had to explain a little bit about when you step out of time and you go forward or back or wherever, you're not to be surprised what is there. And it was so interesting at this time to watch these. I think there were 2 or 3 of these, probably younger than me now, but it was like watching them having difficulty assimilating what they gave themselves, what they told themselves, what they showed. But this person, one person's life, piloting a spaceship, was definitely in the future. Was definitely. Because here she is, an older lady, living very sedately and quiet, and all of a sudden seeing that she's in a spaceship moving through space. These things can happen. It's like I have watched people in my group sitting on logs, going down a river that is moving fast and falling off the log and drowning because they're wearing furs, and that's it. Once you go in that water, you can't. It just drags you down because they're heavy. If anybody's had a fur coat that's got really, really wet, our fur coats are treated. In the old days, they were just animal skins, and they weren't treated like that. So there's many, many different things. Now, for some reason in my mind, as I'm talking to you, is about the Roman times, about being and living. When I was sitting, sorry, I'm skipping ahead a bit. When I was watching the movie, I forget the name of it, but anyway, it was in Rome, and people were driving chariots. There were a lot of chariot racing going on. And as I have seen the big places where they used to do that, I experienced what it was like to live. And I think Gladiator is the movie that triggered a lot of memories for me. It was like, oh yeah, right. They don't have that quite right, but they have this right. And so it's like knowing history from a whole different perspective. The technique I use is to the first lady that I worked with and a gentleman that came soon after and had a whole different way, a technique. I'm pretty imaginative in the sense that my mind can go in many different places. But what this fellow from Colorado who had written a book, Explore Your Past Lives, very simple little book he'd put together. He was in radio, was a very good-looking young man. And he also taught things about how to create that I still use today in different ways too. So his workshop was really good. Plus, my husband at the time really liked him, and so we sort of hung out a little bit. And he learned a lot because, not going to learn from the wife, right? But somebody comes in who's really interesting in the topic lines, was very, very worth listening to. So anyway, his technique was very mental. And I have found it works with men better than kind of more that what I usually use a lot, even on myself, is more feeling and allowing, but it's very mental, switching off your body and then having a projection. And I found that when I have a client, or when I've had a client over time and they just don't get the technique of going in, I switch to this one and they have no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. They just click, click, all the switches off, and there they are. So you see, there's many ways we can approach how we can go and look at who we were at another time. So my little book is basically said many, many lives and many ways of remembering them. And it has just my basic technique in it and some experiences that I experienced on my journey of past life regressions. But it is one of my favorites in my journey personally. I don't know where I would be today without those experiences as I had probably in the early 1980s. I think most of that was coming out. Was beginning to be accepted that, oh, we have had other lives, we have lived. Well, I know I've been on this planet for a long, long time. I have been in much, as I said, much olden times, wearing skins. I seem often to have taken a leadership role in different places and different times. It's been a pleasure at times to see different experiences on from different cultures and different time periods. In Europe, in England, I had quite a backing in England, and I had been mainly probably because all my predecessors in my history has been from England, from English. A lot of English stuff, a lot of English ways. Both parents have come from parents who were born and raised in England. Well, actually, my grandmother wasn't born in England. She was born in New Zealand. But I'm not sure if she was born in England. I know she was there very young in New Zealand. I think she was born in New Zealand. The rest of all English background. So very often your hereditary and I call it the bloodline, is that you can visit a lot there much more easier than you can in other times. I just want to mention that my son, when he first began to do past life regression work, because I had workshops, he'd come along sometimes. And his early lives took him to Atlantis, and he taught us a great deal. And even in his meditations, he would go there. And he explained how in Atlantis, how they governed the cities by having clairvoyants go out every day and look at their section to find out how that was. There's a lot of learning you can have when you begin to look at a different time, rather than what maybe the historians writing books and things, when you have somebody's experiencing what actually had happened. So first of all, we were there. People talk about Atlantis, and he explained a lot of things about what went on in Atlantis and in his life when he was there, and what his job was and how it worked and how all the different things are playing. So this is one of the phenomena can happen when you do past life work. You can begin to understand a whole element of life, how it works, how it came together, how it just generally works or doesn't work, and how the changes of politics, thinking, as the years move by, and how sometimes they change, but then they change back. So it's, sometimes you think you're on a circular going round and round, but we certainly don't run around in skins anymore. Maybe some people still do. I had a little voice say, be careful what you say here, because in where I live, which is North America, in Canada, and very accessible to the US. But when I said no, not running around in skins, sometimes some people still are in some areas of of Earth. Sometimes, especially in time periods, some people, friends, anyway, I correct that. People on Earth have different cultures, different ways of living, different ways of being. And sometimes when you visit those in your past memories, you're a different person. Like in this life, I'm a female, very much female. Yet I've had numbers of male lives. And yes, I've had some female lives, but it seems like I would go more to the learning element through my male lives, where I've messed up or not messed up, or what I've achieved and haven't achieved. Leadership is an interesting thing when you have our leader in some ways or in some respects. And so it is that we move forward. So I wanted to today, because I keep having these memories of past lives that I've lived in the last while. Some of them, as I've said, stretching right back into very early man, until, future elements. But it's an interesting element of to put, we're a jigsaw. Let's put it this way. We're a jigsaw. We have who we are, where we're born, what our genetic makeup. Our genetic makeup, for many of us, has a very strong pull into that line, because we usually, not always, choose parents, or we're attracted to parents. I've talked about it before, how I was dying in Germany. I died in Germany in the Second World War. And it was like I was like a torpedo that went straight to become an embryo in my mother in New Zealand. And there was a very distinct reason why I did that. One, I knew my father. And although at times he wasn't very gentle, I knew him in Egypt, an Egypt life where he was very caring. And my mother was a very kind woman, and she was. So I zoomed there. Yeah, a lot of people have time in between. They go different places. And it's very nice to visit the in-between places as well, where you go to recuperate, to reassess, to decide direction, etc. All of that's important as well. So it's interesting I think it's interesting to know where you came from and what exactly it was about. And my experience in the Second World War was very, very interesting. I was a singer, and I used to love to sing, and did a little bit of it, not much, but I used to. You wouldn't know it now, but yeah, I always enjoyed singing. So I was a singer in a nightclub in Berlin. And I became part of, what would you call it? When you go out there and do sabotage things. There's a name for it. It's just escaping me. And that's what I got picked up with the Nazis from. They found out what we were doing. We were sabotaging. So being a woman, being quite a nice looking woman, they decided I'd be suited for their ladies of the night activities, and I decided something different. And so basically I got killed because I fought. And that was, as soon as I died, off I went again. There was no in between. Sometimes there's in between. Sometimes you go to that in between, those different vibrations, and you reassess, and then may choose, may not, may be told, go there, go here, go wherever. But you come in and then you work away at your life the best you can. And so a lot of the influence you have that you bring in it from other time periods. That's why, to me, past life regression is one of the best things that you can do to learn and experience about who you are, what you've become, what you draw on, why you're attracted to certain things. All of that all goes through different ways that we are. And so I have done one past life regression workshop, and on November the 15th, it's a Saturday, I'm planning on doing another. I can only take 10 people through the Zoom And it works, though. It works. So let me know if you're interested, and we can go and see what you can find in your most important life relating to this one right now. Thank you for watching. I trust this has been informative and have you think a little bit about who were you at another time in another place. Have a good day. Bye now.